In 1936, Buick restructured their lineup with new streamlined styling and model names instead of numbered series, with the mid-range 60 series taking on the name Century, bidding above the Special and below the Roadmaster. It used a smaller 122-inch wheelbase and the bigger 5.2-liter 320 cubic inch overhead valve straight 8 engine of the Roadmaster with 120 horsepower, making it the sportiest Buick, able to maintain speeds over 100 miles an hour while costing just over $1,000. Sales accounted for just over 25,000 of Buick's near 170,000 total for the year. For 1937, the wheelbase increased to 126 inches, and horsepower was up 10 to 130, and then up again in 1938 to 141. Styling was refreshed for 1939 with a split grille and partially integrated headlights, which would be fully integrated the next year, when Buick introduced the smaller, cheaper, and much better selling Super to the mid-range. 1941 models got another power bump to 165, an impressive number for the time. Then there was another styling update for 1942, but production was cut short due to the war, with roughly 4,500 of the $1,300 Century being made, and it did not return after the war, having been fully replaced by the Super. That is until 1954, when the Century name returned to combine the small 122-inch wheelbase body of the Special with the 5.3-liter 322 cubic inch Fireball V8 of the Roadmaster to create a factory hot rod with 195 to 200 horsepower. Prices started just over $2,500, with body styles ranging from the Riviera hardtop coupe to a convertible and a station wagon, with sales near 80,000 for the year. Changes for 1955 included a bumped 236 horsepower and two new body styles, a Riviera 4-door hardtop and a limited 2-door post sedan with only 270 being made, specifically for the California Highway Patrol. Power was up again for 1956 to 255. The cars were longer for 1957, and the engine was up to a 6-liter 364 with 300 horsepower. Some models gained an unusual 3-piece rear window, and there was a new Caballero hardtop estate wagon. They would be restyled again for 1958, taking on a squared-off quad headlight look, but the Century would be replaced by the Invicta for 1959, although the concept would return once again in 1971, with a similar Centurion name, replacing the Wildcat. It was 224 inches long on a 124-inch wheelbase, and weighed roughly 4,300 pounds. Prices started at $4,600. Essentially, a LeSabre with minimal chrome and a standard 7.5-liter 455, rated at 315 gross horsepower. An automatic transmission, power steering, and power front disc brakes were standard, and sales were near 30,000. There was a minor facelift for 1972 and a move to a 255 net horsepower rating, with no actual change. 73 added 5-mile-an-hour bumpers and the LeSabre grille, while horsepower was down 5 for the now optional 455. The standard engine became an 175 horsepower, 5.7-liter 350, and it would be the last year of the Centurion, but the first year of the new Century, replacing the Skylark as the mid-sized Buick. It used the colonnade style of the other GM cars, and coupes were 212 inches long on a 112-inch wheelbase, while the wagon and sedan were 217 inches long on a 117-inch wheelbase. Prices started around $3,100, and it was offered with either the 175 to 190 horsepower 350 or a version of the 455 with 225 to 270 horsepower. And for approximately $450 more, one could opt for the more formal Luxus Coupe or Luxury Regal, Buick's answer to the Monte Carlo. There was also a Grand Sport handling and appearance package, with hints of the earlier muscle cars, capable of a sub-15-second quarter mile if properly equipped. Total Century sales for the year were just under 290,000. There was a new high-energy ignition system for 1974, and the Rally handling package could be ordered without the GS, and the Regal would become available as a 4-door sedan. The big block 455 was dropped for 1975, and an 110 horsepower 3.8-liter 231 V6 became the standard engine, while the formal roofed Luxus was renamed Century Custom, Base models became the Century Special, the Landau roof could be ordered on the semi-fastback coupe, and they would be a Free Spirit Pace Car edition. The cars would get a facelift for 1976, adding rectangular headlights. Sedans and wagons used the same basic body, but with stacked headlights, while the coupes got a more slab-sided body with horizontally arranged lights and different grills, with the Regal being split off as its own model, and the Grand Sport was dropped. But the Free Spirit edition would carry over for the year, and special bicentennial colors were used for the year, ranging from pewter gray to firecracker orange. For 1977, the wagon could be ordered with Oldsmobile 6.6-liter 403 for improved towing, but the Century would be downsized for 1978, down to 196 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase, and 3,100 to 3,400 pounds. It was offered as a fastback coupe or sedan, or a 4-inch longer wagon, priced between $4,000 and $5,300. Base engine was a 3.2-liter 90 to 95 horsepower V6, with the 105 horsepower 3.8-liter V6 optional, and the only V8, a Chevy 5-liter 305, with 135 to 160 horsepower. The styling did not go over well, and first-year sales were under $90,000. A limited turbo coupe was added for 1979, bumping horsepower of the 3.8-liter up to 175. For a mid-16 second quarter mile. With just over 1,600 made, total Century sales were down to just over 50,000. So the fastback sedan was replaced for 1980 by a more traditional notchback sedan, sharing its length with the wagon. The smaller V6 was gone, but the turbo carried over, and V8s now included a 4.3-liter, 120 horsepower Pontiac 265, a 4.9-liter 140 horsepower Pontiac 301, and the Chevy 305 with 155 horsepower. Sales would nearly triple to over 150,000. For 1981, the fastback coupe and the 301 and 305 V8s were dropped, but a 5.7-liter Oldsmobile diesel V8 was optional. There would be a new smaller front-wheel drive Century for 1982, but the previous version would carry on as the Regal sedan. And the new Century was offered as an 189-inch long coupe or sedan on a 104-inch wheelbase, starting just over $9,000. Engines included a 2.5-liter inline-4 with 90 horsepower, or a 3-liter V6 with 110 horsepower, or a 4.3-liter diesel V6 with 85 horsepower. First-year sales were just over $100,000, or $10,000 more than the slightly cheaper Regal sedan and wagon that was previously the Century. 1983 added an 191-inch long wagon version and a T-type appearance package with alloy wheels. Overall, sales increased by 25,000, and a bigger 125 horsepower 3.8-liter became an available option for 1984. There was also a special Olympia edition that was white with gold accents to commemorate Buick's sponsorship of the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. 1985 would be the last year of the diesel, and the 3-liter V6, which was replaced mid-year by a 2.8-liter with 112 horsepower. There would be a minor facelift for 1986, as GM tried to answer criticism of brand variants all looking the same, and horsepower of the 3.8-liter V6 was up to 150, allowing for a one-year-only GS Coupe, a 17-second version of the car. Sales would peak that year at roughly 270,000, while some export versions were sold as the Chevrolet Century or as the Buick Regal, where the Toyota Century was already being sold. The smaller V6 got a horsepower boost for 1987, up to 125, and 1988 would be the last year of the sealed beam headlights, getting another minor facelift for 1989, when the car moved to a 3.3-liter V6 with 160 horsepower. The Century was effectively replaced in 1990 by a new four-door version of the Regal, but Century sales remained strong, continuing on, getting another minor facelift for 1991 with a more pronounced grille. 1993 would be the last year of the coupe, which was only accounting for less than 1,000 of the 120,000 in annual sales, and the base engine became a 2.2-liter 4, initially with 110 horsepower, climbing to 120 horsepower for its second year, when the 3.3-liter was replaced by a 3.1-liter with the same 160 horsepower, and seeing no additional significant changes through 1996. After 15 years of little cosmetic change, there was a new Century for 1997, 195 inches long on a 109-inch wheelbase, and weighing around 3,400 pounds. It was essentially just a base version of the new Regal sedan, with marginally different styling. The 3.1-liter V6 carried over as the only domestic engine offering, and prices started just under $19,000. Export models could have either a dual overhead cam 2-liter inline-4 with 135 horsepower, or a 3-liter V6 with 170 horsepower. The 3.1-liter got a horsepower bump in 2000 to 175, and by this point, the Century was Buick's cheapest model. The base Custom was dropped in 2003, just leaving the top limited trim level, although there would be a better equipped Special Edition for 2005, the car's final year, as the Century and Regal were replaced by the new LaCrosse, although Buick would revive the name again in China for 2022 on a minivan, offered in base, premium, Avenir, and flagship trim levels, competing in the ultra-luxury segment. It was 206 inches long on a 123-inch wheelbase, powered by a 2-liter Turbo 4 with a mild hybrid system, a segment and vehicle that are unlikely to come to the U.S. anytime soon. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.